Welcome to Newt's World Podcast on the iHeart Podcast Network. A lot of things going on. President Trump is trying to widen the Abraham Accords by, frankly, pushing the Saudis and others to join in the agreement. He thinks that it will strengthen the survival of Israel and strengthen the stability of the region. He stated that Saudi Arabia and Qatar should sign first, and then he said Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and Jordan should also join. Trump posted, quote, "I am mandatorily requesting that all countries immediately sign the Abraham Accords, and that if Iran signs its agreement with me as President of the United States, it will be an honor to have them also be part of this unparalleled world coalition." Presently, the Abraham Accords have been signed by Bahrain, Kazakhstan, Morocco, Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates. It's also interesting that there's reports that the Iranians are beginning to restore the internet to millions of people in Iran during the blackout. They literally couldn't communicate. Now they're letting them start to communicate again. That could be a very positive thing. We'll see. According to Iran's first vice president, Mohammad Reza Aref, in line with the esteemed president's mission and in fulfillment of the government's promise, the first step toward free and regulated access to cyberspace has been taken. The Iranian government earlier had justified the shutdown on national security grounds, although a lot of people thought they did it, frankly, to stop communication between people who were against the government. NetBlocks, an internet monitoring group, has said that its data shows a partial restoration to internet connectivity after 88 days, making it the longest nationwide internet shutdown in modern history. Coming up, I'm joined by Brent Dusing, founder and CEO of TruPlay, the world's leading faith-based gaming and entertainment platform for children. That's next. I am really pleased to welcome my guest, Brent Dusing, founder and CEO of TruPlay, the world's leading faith-based gaming and entertainment platform for children. Brent, welcome, and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Thank you, Newt. Great to be with you.
You spent your career at the intersection of technology, entertainment, digital culture, and faith. What first drew you into the tech world?
When I graduated from college in 2001, it was right during the dot-com crash. But I had seen so many companies come to light, Amazon, eBay, a lot of other companies that are kind of bygone now, that had made such big differences. And I spent a couple summers in Silicon Valley working. And so technology seemed to me to be an exciting way to make big change, big impact, and hopefully make a positive impact on people's lives.
You were for a while at Menlo Ventures. What is Menlo Ventures?
One of the top venture firms in the world. They were one of the biggest investors in Hotmail. If you remember Hotmail way, way long ago before they sold to Microsoft. They are investors in Anthropic, who makes Claude. They're one of the biggest investors there. They were one of the biggest investors in Uber. And they also backed my first company, Cellfire.
It's amazing. When you start from there, what do you think you learned about how to think when you were working with Menlo?
I learned a lot because it was my first job out of college. And what I learned was how to invest when things are bad. So my first day of work was September 4th, 2001, right? So 7 days later, the whole world is shut down, right? And the stock market, it was already declining, but it hit rock bottom, right then. And it stayed rock bottom really until we went into Iraq in early 2003. And so you had about 18 months of just a low stock market flatline, which of course affects everything, affects the capital markets. So what I learned was how to invest in technology companies and how to choose opportunities with all the hype stripped away. Because, 2 years prior in 1999, it was eyeballs, it was hype, it was all types of nonsensical reasons that many investments were made. Not all of them, but many. And so when you strip all that back and you're forced to make decisions just looking at facts and how to do that in a proper, appropriate way, that really helped me a lot for what I do today.
You pioneered game creation with Christian content, starting with Lightside Games, which is a Christian gaming studio, which has reached over 7 million game players and resulted in about 25,000 decisions for Christ, partnering with the Billy Graham Evangelical Association. It's a very interesting decision on your part that that's the niche that you want to build your career around. How did you come to that conclusion?
It was a combination of things. I came to Christ in 2003, 2004 timeframe at a little church in Mountain View, California. There are still some churches in California for our listeners out there. And I went to this little Bible church and started asking the pastor a lot of questions. And he gave me a lot of things that really supported the evidence for the truth of the Bible and the resurrection of Jesus Christ and who Jesus was, and it really changed my life. And the other thing is I saw the movie The Passion of the Christ, and that planted this idea in my mind. You know, you look at not just how good that movie was, but how many people it reached. And a lot of it was because Mel Gibson married biblical authenticity with a really high quality production. I'd grown up playing video games, grown up making games as a kid. And so after my first company, which was a mobile coupon company people might have used in grocery stores, after that, I really wanted to do something that I thought would really impact people's lives. And that's really where people are. You know, a lot of times the popular media misses the idea that more money is spent on video games than on movie theater box office receipts. Children play video games. It's really their preferred media form these days. And so that results in a massive opportunity to reach people.
Given what you do now, but you actually started with Cellfire, which provided mobile grocery coupons. Now, I would think that requires you to sell either the food manufacturer or the grocery company. So in many ways, it's not a technology play, it's a marketing play.
The answer, Nude, was both. So we had to go cut deals with the CPG companies. So those were our customers, right? So Procter & Gamble and Kraft, and we had to go cut deals with grocery stores like Kroger and Safeway. So if you go to any Kroger or Safeway today, inside the grocery store, you'll see, hey, use your cell phone and use coupons on your cell phone to save money on the grocery store. That's what Cellfire had created. Then there wasn't even an app store when we started Cellfire, so we had to go negotiate with all the wireless carriers like AT&T and Verizon to get permission to run on their network. So that was 20 years ago. Things were more complicated to execute then, but we got it done. We did the first time a mobile phone integrated into a point-of-sale system. We did that with Kroger stores at Cellfire.
What inspired you? Because you're now making a huge jump when you create TruPlay, which is a platform focused on biblically grounded content for children between 5 and 12 minutes. That's a big jump from coupons. How did that occur?
So sometimes, Newt, you're called to things. God calls you into things. And when you finish one adventure and you're searching for what's the next, God sometimes meets you there. And so with TruPlay, I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? We'd had some success and things like that. I'm not a guy that sit on the couch forever, play golf. Those kind of things aren't that interesting to me. And God really spoke to me about the vision and what he wanted me to do. And that was confirmed by a lot of facts. Things have never been worse for children in America than they are today. I'll give you some facts. Anxiety, suicide, and depression rates are at all-time highs for children. The average male is exposed to pornography when he's 12 years old. Only 31% of children in America believe in God without a doubt, compared to 68% of adults over 40. Only 2% of kids have a biblical worldview. The overall point is that we're just losing this massive generation of children. It's because they're on screens 50 hours a week. And it's not that screens are bad, but the content they're inundated with from TikTok, from Roblox, which we're going to talk about a little later, from so much toxic content around identity and sexuality and your hyperviolence and a lot of demonic content that's out there now, have changed their opinions about what's true, what they desire in their life, what's important for them to focus their time and energy on, and what even their identity is. And so we wanted to go do something about it. And at TruPlay, the thrust has been, let's build something that's fun so kids actually want to choose to do it. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's also high quality, but it's also going to contain God's truth in every piece of content you touch. Everything you do is going to contain God's truth.
Did you find generally that churches were responding positively to the concept of TruPlay?
They do, because most pastors want to see good results for the children, and they don't have a lot of resources available to them, right?
From your perspective, looking at all this, does it worry you how much children are interacting with systems like ChatGPT rather than interacting with human beings?
It does. Think about social media, right? Social media has actually really done the opposite of what it's purported to. When social media started, it was we're going to connect people in better ways. What it's actually done is make us antisocial, right? It's polarized people, right? And all the woke stuff, whether it's sexual identity or just racial hatred and animosity, that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't social media. Where there's some positives that came out with certain truths and things being revealed. Yeah, sure. As you know, it's devastated news, right? And sure, it's sprouted some independent journalism. But by and large, I think social media has been a big net negative to society. And what it's really done is to put control in a small number of people's hands. Now, you asked about ChatGPT, which, of course, AI is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. I think so much of what not enough young people realize is they go immediately to ChatGPT as a source of truth to do school homework on their behalf, right, or to write a resume or whatever. And what they don't realize is that it's being controlled and it has an agenda. And the agenda is really an anti-Christian worldview from a lot of these big tech platforms, and especially Google, actually, because we have had a lot of receipts to prove that with Google from what we've experienced here at TruPlay. That's the real danger, is who do you go for your source of truth? And if you're going to AI chatbots, and if you're not aware that they're going to try to drive you away from the things of goodness, the things of God, then we've got real problems.
Do you think there's that almost a conscious culture of Silicon Valley, or why does that exist?
100%. So if you think about it, the things that happen in tech companies are often reflections of their founders, the choices they make. Apple, very famously, their design aesthetic came from Steve Jobs' minimalistic viewpoint. On Meta or Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, right? They would block and ban conservatives, Christians, right? But they never banned anybody on the far left. You never found the real extreme leftists being banned for their points of view. You never found people with these really horrible sexual things they're pushing on children. You hardly saw that banned, right? And so there really is an agenda and a belief system. And I mean, think about this. Name one big tech company that's run by a Bible-believing Christian. One of the big mega $500 billion or more, you can't. And a lot of the people who work at those companies and make decisions for what content is promoted and what content's created and what content's allowed, because I include Disney in this too, content creators as well. Their viewpoint of Christianity is somewhere between it's a big waste of time to as extreme as it's the worst thing in the world and we've got to eradicate it. And that's why we had a lot of the discrimination that we had happen in the past few years and why there are real issues we have to deal with right now as Americans to prevent AI from trying to destroy the Christian worldview.
There's a lot of controversy about a system called Roblox and whether or not it's actually sort of a setup for some adults to groom young children. I mean, what's your view of that whole issue?
It certainly is. Roblox, if you're listening, is a platform that over 100 million children use every day. And it's purported as, hey, it's a place where kids can build games and play other kids' games, which sounds fun, right? Like digital Legos. The problem is there have been stories for 15 years of child porn, sex trafficking, groomers and predators. Tucker Carlson recently had someone on his show who's an ethical hacker who went on to Roblox and he said he would pretend to be a kid so he would try to get predators to come after him. And he said every time he tried, eventually a predator came at him. There was a young man who was killed, 15 years old, in Stony Brook, New York, left his house, and 6 weeks later was found dead in a river in New York City. Stony Brook's about 2 hours away from New York City. And the last thing he'd been doing was playing Roblox. They are under lawsuits by 10 different state attorney generals because they've had for 15 years children being preyed upon. Here's why. The thing is that they make money based on people to choose to opt in to spend money inside the game. So it's a free-to-play platform, and you can spend money for, increased things. When you run free-to-play games, only like 5% of people pay most of these games. Usually people will pay, $5, $10 a month, but the real money is in what you call the whales, which is people who spend thousands of dollars a month on video games, right? That's how Candy Crush makes money. That's how a lot of these games make money. Let me ask you this question. With Roblox, who's more likely to spend $1,000 a month, a 10-year-old boy or a 50-year-old man? And that's, I think, the reason why they haven't done enough.
When you develop a platform, because you're coming at it from a values-based background, how do you block the kind of predatory behavior that we see all too often in some of the other platforms?
Well, so with TruPlay, there are no chat rooms. There's no ads. There's also no micro purchases. So you pay a subscription once and that's it. So we're here to protect children, right? We're here to give your kids an amazing experience that's fun, that they're going to love, that also enables them to take something away with them that is not just for this life, but for eternity. You know, things about the truth of God and hope and optimism and the fact that they have a real purpose. That's our number one goal. And I'm so disappointed that Roblox, they've had these problems for so long and they've done nothing to prevent it. From my standpoint, at TruPlay, we do everything we can to make sure that children are safe and protected and that it's a place that parents can trust and feel safe.
You represent a very interesting intersection. On the one hand, a very deep set of values, and on the other hand, very sophisticated knowledge of the art of investing. How do you weave those two together to form a mutually reinforcing symbiotic system?
I think it really starts with what's our purpose? Why are we doing this, right? And then in terms of games, we have to make a game that's fun. We have to make a game that's fun and enjoyable and that gives people something they're going to enjoy doing, and then wrap that in a story, right? Because many games tell stories. And so inside the story, you may be playing King David. So we have a King David's Battles game where you play King David and you go fight Goliath. We have a game called Stained Glass where you match these stained glass pieces and then eventually the glass pieces form a stained glass window. The stained glass window comes to life and tells you the story from the Bible. Some of the characters speaks to you. We also have a story about a little girl called Maple, who's a bunny rabbit who wears a tiger costume that goes into the forest and finds that the forest is darker and it's deteriorating and there's monsters there. And it's because this evil queen has confiscated all the Bibles out of their society. And so there are many ways to build games and make them entertaining. And we like to tie stories in that connect with people, connect with their hearts, and take them along the journey with us in stories that we tell.
When we come back, we're going to discuss why college students are booing discussions about artificial intelligence and what does their reaction reveal about the fear, the uncertainty, and the future of work in the AI era. You've seen these various news stories where people are giving a speech, particularly at, for some reason, college commencements. If you mention artificial intelligence, people just start booing. To me, that's almost like booing the mention of the wheel or the mention of the steamboat. In your own mind, as somebody who really understands this vastly better than I do, how do you think about artificial intelligence and its relationship to the rest of us?
I think the first statement I'd make is that the benefits of technology, any new technology, are always oversold way before the downsides are considered. You know, consider the car, right? The Model T. So my great-grandmother died in a car wreck coming back from my grandfather's wedding and probably around 40 to 50 mile an hour accident. Why? Because Model Ts didn't have seat belts and airbags and anti-lock brakes, right? So if you had a wreck, that was it. Asbestos. Hey, asbestos is a great, cheap way to provide insulation buildings. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, it also causes cancer, right? Social media, we just talked about, right? It didn't make us more connected. It actually made us more antisocial and increased anxiety, suicide, and depression rates. The challenge with AI, there are many benefits to it, but the reason why you see these reactions from college students at a baseline is, of course, because it's destroying the job market, especially for entry-level help. You asked me about my first job right out of college when we started, right? So when I was young and all my colleagues from college and other friends I had at other places, you could go to a workplace and with almost zero experience, I mean, I had a couple summer internships, but get a decent, high-paying job, and I could come in and actually deliver. For Menlo Ventures, I delivered value for them, brought in investments that made them a lot of money. And that was true for most entry-level jobs. You know, there was this understanding, this implicit understanding that, hey, you may not have a lot of skills, but you stick with us for a while, we'll train you. You're going to work hard. You're going to work harder than the average employee because you're young, and you're going to earn it, and you're going to get there, and everybody benefits from that understanding. Now, from a pure economic standpoint, right, for most businesses, it doesn't make sense for them to carry on that expense because certain AI agents can do work levels at a level at or higher than what a entry-level person can do. And frankly, not just entry-level, there are a lot of jobs being replaced from people who have had those jobs for 30 years, replaced by AI agents. So think about this, Newt. This is the first time in the history of the world that CEOs of companies have said, the product I'm selling you may destroy you and kill you. You've had Dario Amodei say that from Anthropic famously. You've had Elon Musk say versions of that. You've had Sam Altman. I don't know if he said that publicly, but it's come across in some of his writings. The people creating these very things think there's a real chance that it destroys society. And there's this real danger that AI creates a world where, kind of like H.G. Wells' Time Machine book, where you have this society where there's a small number of people who were in charge and control AI, and everyone else is just paid universal basic income, which you spent a lot of your career fighting leftism and Soviet-style thinking, and that's the type of world you wind up in.
But do you think that has to be the way, or can AI actually empower higher levels of creativity?
That's the real question. I think the answer from where I see things today, certainly AI can empower certain levels of creativity. There is a risk that it creates massive devastation, and that's why you see floated by a lot of AI company CEOs that, hey, we're going to go to universal basic income. There's a term that people in politics use, where you go trial balloon, right? Where you float the idea and you get people talking about it before it's there so they're more used to it when it actually happens. That's why universal basic income is being trial ballooned. I'll tell you a story. So someone I know told me that's really close to one of the big AI company CEOs. He said that they tried a universal basic income experiment. I believe one of the tech companies did this, and they took a few thousand people and they paid them universal basic income. And guess what happened to the men? They did drugs and watched porn, right? If you take a man's purpose away, like a man who's fully engaged and healthy and can be a contributor to society, and you take away his purpose to work, it destroys him. I mean, that's the story from the Garden of Eden, right? God said, hey, Adam, I made you. You're in charge of the world. Go steward the earth. Even when they got removed from the Garden of Eden, the job was still that he had to go out and build and harvest and so forth. And that's what men and women, too, are built to do. And so I think the fact that this is being floated, and nobody knows the future exactly, but there's real dangers that we wind up in a situation of a small number of oligarchs controlling way too much. And that's why we have to really stop that now as Americans before we wind up in a society like what happened to the Soviet Union, where you had a Christian nation, which was Russia, small number of people take over with a lot of power and devastate the entire place, both economically, but also culturally and from a faith standpoint.
Nicholas Eberstadt, who's a great demographer, points out that there are about 7 million males who have now dropped out. They're no longer listed as looking for work or as unemployed because they're not. They don't want to be employed. 7 million, which is about the number that was unemployed at the peak of the Great Depression. It raises a lot of your point, which is a lot of social questions about what's happening to the culture. Coming up, we'll discuss whether we as a society can embrace artificial intelligence without losing human connection, creativity, and moral grounding. How do you see a faith-based approach to life and artificial intelligence? Can they become synergistic or symbiotic and mutually reinforcing, or are they inherently at conflict?
I think the way that AI is designed right now, because it's controlled by value systems programmed in that have very anti-Christian views. And you mentioned Eric Schmidt. He's the former CEO of Google. If AI continues to make decisions about who can post on social media, who can speak publicly, eventually, who can receive resources, banks transfer money all the time. If you're on a hate group list, you're on a dangerous group list, you can't receive funding. That's very famously happened to a lot of Christian and conservative organizations put on the Southern Poverty Law Center hate group list, right? I'll tell you a story. We make really high quality video games and entertainment for kids. It's Christian. We have been running ads. We ran ads on Google and have been blocked for over a year and a half from running ads because they say you can't advertise because your content is religious in nature. However, they allow satanic games, Roblox, which had literally a game where you could recreate a school shooting, the Uvalde shooting in Texas, and then pray to Satan. There's another game inside Roblox called Night Watch, which was a pentagram and blood on the wall. That was an ad they ran. They could run that ad. Buddhist products can run ads, and transgender for kids can run ads, which, let's be honest, that's some level of faith to believe in that. They were able to run ads on Google, but Google's system blocked us from advertising. And it was because their algorithms read the Christian worldview as dangerous and harmful content. Then, 3 weeks ago, when you do an app update, Google denied our app update because they said your content is too violent. Why? Because we had a picture of Jesus Christ on the cross as a cartoon. And we appealed twice. They ignored us. And then Breitbart called them. A reporter from Breitbart called them. They said, oh, sorry, we made an error. But it revealed their agenda. And not everybody realized, Google controls the majority of phones in the world through Android. They control television now through YouTube and YouTube TV. They control a huge amount of browsers with Chrome. They control Gmail. They're the front door of the internet for so many people because of Google search, and now that's just being replaced by the Gemini system. Here's the thing. We have evidence that Google's AI system actively discriminates against the Christian worldview. There's been well-documented stories of people doing the same thing with ChatGPT and searches and how it will lead you to discriminate against Christians from a Christian worldview perspective. If those machines are making decisions about, again, who can speak publicly and who can post on social media and who can receive electronic funding and who's a domestic terrorist, all those discrimination things that happened under Obama and Biden that have been well documented. The DOJ just released an expose about it 2 weeks ago. All that happened back then will be even worse because the machine is more ubiquitous, it's more powerful, will be making those decisions. And we really face a situation where you wind up like the Soviet Union. A small number of people are in power. There's government control, a small government or big tech control, oligarchy control over the economy. And the Christian worldview was silenced because that's the real story of the Soviet Union is they destroyed the church. They killed pastors and priests. They destroyed churches, and the whole religious faith there was devastated.
You actually have the potential of being where we were with the railroads or with Standard Oil or AT&T or IBM. These things are so big that their very size is a danger.
I think that's obvious, and I think it's worse than it was with AT&T. Sure, they had pricing power. I think that was the last time a real antitrust case in America happened and was actually carried through, wasn't it? Because the Microsoft verdict got overturned. So I think that was the last big one, right? Which is how many years ago? 50 years ago or more? So kind of shows you that big tech has so much governmental power and control, right? That we're on this dangerous precipice of conceding authority to big tech, eradicating our government. Sam Altman has even said publicly, so Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, which produces ChatGPT. Sam Altman has said, the government we have may not serve us anymore. AI will just figure it out. It's become a religion. There's a really brilliant journalist named Karen Howe, who MIT grads, I think she's in her mid-30s, and she's done a lot of research and interviewing. She very famously went into ChatGPT and did a lot of interviews and things. And she said, what they're really selling is a religion. And it's true. What AI is really being sold as is we're going to make this digital God that's going to solve all of our problems. And it's going to erase the need for humans to work and for us to have a government and us to have a legal system, right? And so that's the dangers we've spent. If you think about it, the last, let's say, since the time of Abraham, 4,000 years, right? Building this civilization that's certainly not perfect, but for the large part works pretty well. And conceding, everything we've done in America, 250th anniversary in 2 months, right, is everything we've done to build this nation and our Constitution is in real danger of being completely stripped away and eradicated because we're going to be conceding authority to this machine that we think is going to solve all of our problems. To me, there's a word in the Bible for that. In Genesis, the first book of the Bible, called idolatry. You're going to build this thing that you think is going to solve all your problems. The difference today is that when people built all those stone statues and wooden poles that they prayed to a long time ago, the thing just sat there. Now the machine actually has agency. That's the difference in idolatry today.
That's very, very fascinating. Brent, I want to thank you for joining me. And our listeners can learn more about TruPlay by visiting your website at TruPlayGames.com.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, and I appreciate you and all the work you've done. And Just wanted to give a shout out. I was 16 when you got elected as speaker and really always admired your career from afar. And I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Stever, my civics teacher in high school, who we'd have these big debates about the revolution that you led. And so just want to say a big shout out to Mr. Stever. And thank you for your time this morning, Newt.
And now I'm pleased to introduce a new segment to Newt's World, where I answer listeners' questions. To ask a question, please email me at newt@gingrich360.com. Since this episode is about artificial intelligence, we thought we'd have some fun with the question. This question comes from ChatGPT. My producer entered the prompt, "Ask Newt Gingrich a question about the use of AI in government." Quote, "You've long advocated for modernization and innovation in government. As artificial intelligence becomes more capable, where do you believe AI can most effectively improve government performance, and where do you think human judgment must always remain central?" It's a great question, and it tells you a lot about the rise of artificial intelligence, that systems like ChatGPT have this kind of impact. My personal belief is that the two great impacts of things like ChatGPT are going to be on taking care of clerical activities so that they're all done automatically, efficiently, in a personable way. And second, looking at very advanced, very complicated issues. The human brain has about as many synapses as there are stars in the universe, and it's going to take something like artificial intelligence to begin to make the kind of breakthroughs we need for Alzheimer's and for other kind of cognitive concerns. In my mind, those are the great breakthrough areas. I look forward to hearing from you or your ChatGPT or however you want to do it. To ask a question, please email me at newt@gingrich360.com. Thank you to my guest, Brent Dusing. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Join me on Substack at gingrich360.net. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.